For thousands of years, the Jedi claimed to be the galaxy's guardians. They stood for peace, balance, and justice, or at least that's what they said. But every time they appeared, war followed. Civilizations crumbled, empires rose, and somehow the peace they promised always came with casualties. Maybe it's time to ask the question Star Wars has avoided for decades. Does the galaxy even need the Jedi anymore? Because the truth is, peace under the Jedi was never really peace. It was order disguised as balance. They ruled from temples, preached detachment, and called it harmony. But what kind of harmony requires silence, obedience, and the suppression of emotion? The Jedi weren't conquerors, but they weren't saints either. They fought wars in the name of compassion, condemned love in the name of purity, and enforced balance with lightsabers instead of understanding. Their intentions were noble, but their execution was catastrophic. And when they were gone, something strange happened. The galaxy didn't die. It learned. Ordinary people rose up, the Force found new voices, and balance began to mean something entirely different. Maybe the galaxy doesn't need another order telling it how to live. Maybe it needs to define peace for itself, free from the shackles of tradition and the illusion of control. In this video, we'll explore whether the galaxy would truly be better off without the Jedi, how their absence reshaped everything we know, and whether Star Wars' greatest heroes might have also been its greatest problem all along. Every time the Jedi rise, the galaxy falls into chaos. It's almost poetic. The order built to bring peace always seems to bring war instead. Whether it was the Mandalorian Wars, the Clone Wars, or even the Purge that followed, the Jedi's presence seems to attract conflict like gravity. Maybe it's not coincidence. Maybe the Jedi's version of peace is just another kind of control. The Jedi claimed to serve balance, but their balance always came with a price. They imposed their beliefs on entire systems, judged leaders, interfered in politics, and called it guidance. Yet they failed to see how that very control caused resentment and rebellion. The Sith didn't rise from nothing. They rose from the cracks the Jedi created. Think about the Clone Wars for a second. The Jedi became generals, not guardians. They led armies instead of mediating peace. They justified it as necessity. But that war destroyed the very republic they swore to protect. How ironic is it that the defenders of peace ended up commanding soldiers bred for battle? And worse, most Jedi never questioned it. Then there's their obsession with the code. The code wasn't enlightenment, it was a cage. It silenced emotion, forbade love, and punished individuality. That kind of discipline might sound noble, but in practice it created hypocrisy. The Jedi preached compassion but denied attachment, taught freedom but enforced obedience. It's no wonder their own students turned against them. Anakin Skywalker wasn't an anomaly, he was a symptom. His fall to the dark side wasn't just personal failure, it was institutional. The Jedi told him to suppress everything human about himself until he broke. And when he did, they blamed him for the cracks their system caused. Remove the Jedi from that equation, and maybe Anakin's tragedy never happens at all. But even without Anakin, the pattern remains. Whenever the Jedi gain influence, the galaxy polarizes. Because the Jedi don't bring unity, they bring ideology. They define light and dark as absolutes, and in doing so they create their own enemies. You can't have balance when one side controls the definition of it. Look at the High Republic era. The Jedi had more freedom, more optimism, and still, they acted like overseers of the galaxy. Their arrogance nearly destroyed them then too, just in a prettier package. They may have smiled more, but the philosophy was the same. Peace through order, not understanding. So maybe the galaxy doesn't need the Jedi. Not because they're evil, but because they're outdated. A peace built on detachment doesn't work in a universe driven by emotion, connection, and choice. The Jedi keep trying to freeze the galaxy in balance when balance is supposed to move, breathe, and evolve. The hard truth is, the galaxy might have been better off without their interference. Because every time they tried to bring peace, what they really brought was a war over who gets to define it. Let's look at what actually happened when the Jedi were gone. After Order 66, the galaxy fell into darkness, but not because the Jedi were gone. It fell because the power they once held was suddenly unopposed. The Empire didn't invent tyranny, It inherited the system the Jedi helped build, a galaxy where obedience to authority was already expected, just under a different name. When the Jedi were wiped out, the galaxy didn't suddenly collapse. It adapted. Smugglers, rebels, and ordinary people began taking responsibility for their own destinies. Mon Mothma, Bail Organa, Saw Gerrera, all fought tyranny without the Force guiding their hands. For the first time, peace wasn't a Jedi project, it was a collective effort, and that mattered. The rebellion succeeded not because of the Jedi, but in spite of them. Luke was powerful, yes, but his power didn't save the galaxy. His compassion did. Leia's leadership, Han's defiance, and the will of countless nameless rebels mattered just as much as any lightsaber duel. Maybe more. Without the old order, the galaxy learned that heroism wasn't exclusive to monks with space magic. And that shift changed everything. Because once the Jedi were gone, people began to see the Force differently. Not as a hierarchy, not as something reserved for the pure or the chosen, but as something anyone could feel. Chirrut Imwe in Rogue One had no Jedi training, no lightsaber, and yet his faith in the Force was stronger than half the Council ever showed. The Jedi claimed the Force as their domain, but without them, the galaxy rediscovered it as something universal. Farmers, smugglers, warriors, they all began to see the Force not as law but as life. That's what true balance looks like. Not control, not abstinence, but harmony between choice and consequence. And ironically, the absence of the Jedi gave rise to more diverse interpretations of the Force. From the Night Sisters of Dathomir to the Guardians of the Wills, every group brought new perspective and meaning to something the Jedi had monopolized. The galaxy didn't stop believing. It started believing differently. Of course, that freedom came with chaos. The Empire thrived because there was no one left strong enough to challenge it. But that's the paradox. If the galaxy can't stand without an order to babysit it, was it ever truly free in the first place? The Jedi wanted to maintain peace, but they made the galaxy dependent on them to have it. So while their extinction caused suffering, it also forced evolution. People grew stronger, more self-reliant, more understanding of what peace truly means. A peace not defined by doctrine, but by the shared will to live freely. The Jedi's absence didn't doom the galaxy. It revealed how much they'd been holding it back. But maybe the answer isn't as simple as with or without. Because as flawed as the Jedi were, their presence kept the galaxy from tipping too far into chaos. They were a moral compass, even if it was cracked. Without them, the galaxy eventually found its footing, but at tremendous cost. Billions died before a new order emerged. Maybe the lesson isn't that the galaxy is better without the Jedi. It's that it's better without what they became. The Jedi started as seekers of truth, not soldiers of ideology. They were meant to study the Force, not control it. But over centuries they forgot. They became politicians, warriors, and symbols of a peace that no longer existed. The moment they sat on the council, they stopped listening to the Force and started interpreting it. That was their greatest sin. Not arrogance, but translation. And yet, for all their hypocrisy, the galaxy still needed them. Not as generals or prophets, but as examples. The Jedi's downfall became a lesson in how easily good intentions can become tyranny. They were a mirror for the galaxy to see what happens when you mistake control for compassion. That's what Luke tried to fix in The Last Jedi. And yes, say what you will about that movie, but its message about failure hit the heart of the problem. Luke realized the Jedi weren't inherently good or bad. They were human. They made mistakes, they learned, and their true legacy wasn't the code, it was the courage to question it. The galaxy doesn't need the Jedi as they were. It needs what they could become. People who serve the Force by listening to it, not owning it. Individuals who understand that balance doesn't mean suppression, it means coexistence. Without the old order's chains, the next generation could finally live what the Jedi only preached. Ahsoka represents that idea perfectly. She left the Order because she saw its flaws, but she never stopped being what the Jedi were supposed to be. A protector without a master, a servant of life. Not an institution. If the galaxy has a future with the Jedi, it's through people like her, not temples, not councils, not dogma. So would the galaxy be better without the Jedi? Maybe it would be better without the old Jedi, but not without the ideal they were meant to represent. Because even in their failure, they gave the galaxy something priceless, a reason to question what peace really costs. The truth is, balance doesn't need the Jedi, but the Jedi need balance. And maybe for the first time, they're finally learning what that means. The galaxy doesn't need perfection. It needs humility. And that's something the Jedi could only learn once they were gone.
Thank you for watching. Be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that share button. My main channel is Critical Analysis Hub, where I post Star Wars content about the movies. My secondary channel is Critical Analysis Hub Plus, where I focus on the shows of Star Wars. And my third channel is Critical Analysis Hub XP, where I post comic books. Be sure to take a moment and check them out. Thanks, and may the Force be with you.